Life sometimes come at you fast. Tragedies make your life unravel. You feel like you wanna give up and stay knocked down. Even when your heart is shattered, you still got a life to live. You still got a life to live, so don't give up. We are beautiful miracles. We are beautiful miracles. We are beautiful miracles, so don't give up.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me on my podcast, Beautiful Tragedy. If you like what you're hearing, would you please like, comment, share, and subscribe? And today I am joined by Melissa Cottner and her daughter, Joni, and they came on to talk about their Melissa's daughter, Chelsea. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And let's just start out with telling us about your daughter. Tell us about Chelsea.
Chelsea was 24. She was an EMT, going to paramedic school. Eventually wanted to go into firefighting. She was beautiful, young, engaged to be married, Halloween of 2020. And she passed away November 6th of 2019. Chelsea had endometriosis pretty bad, and she also had scoliosis, and the pain led her to prescription drugs.
Yeah. So she was using prescription drugs because of her pain. Did she have mental health struggles also?
Yes, she did also have depression and anxiety pretty bad.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it definitely, so many people struggle with all that addiction with their mental health, and people have a hard time talking about that. And I just think it's important to really shine the light on some of those subjects that people shy away from, because not talking about it doesn't make it not exist. You
Absolutely.
know? So obviously her death was not expected.
It was not.
Would you talk a little bit about that?
I received a phone call at 9:23 on November 6th, and it was her fiance telling me she couldn't wake her up. And I said, "Is she breathing?" She said, "I can't tell." And I said, "Call 911, we're on our way." So I woke my husband up. My husband works nights, and I woke him up, and he said, "Let's wait until the paramedics get there to see where they're going to take her." And I said, "I don't want to wait. I want to leave now."
Yeah.
And about that time, her fiance called me back and said that the paramedics were working on her. And I said, okay. And then about that time, I hear her say, it's her parents. And a police officer took the phone from her. And at that point, I threw my cell phone at my husband because I knew what was coming.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, I just knew it. And I ran in the other room, and I heard my husband with this god-awful scream.
Those screams, you just never forget those.
Yeah. And he hung up with the police officer, and then we headed over to the house. When we got to her house, well, I called Joni because Joni's the only one of our other children that live in town.
Okay.
I don't even remember what I said to her, but she did contact her other siblings. And then when we got over to her house, there was a car that was like coming in at the same time as us, and it was the coroner. And so
it happens that quick?
It did with her.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I just didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know it happened so fast.
Now with my father-in-law, it didn't.
Wow.
But with her, it was very quick. And he kind of ran in front of my husband and I and turned around on their sidewalk and said, "Nobody's going in the house until I say so."
Oh.
And I said, "That's my baby in there. I'm going in." And he ran in the house, locked the door. So we couldn't go in, and her fiance couldn't come out.
Were they like thinking it could have possibly been a crime scene? Is that the reason?
They said they have to check. And I understand that, you know.
Right.
I think where I had a rough time was they could have at least let somebody come in there and sit with her. Yeah, so she wasn't all by herself. I don't even remember. How long do you think it was before they let her out?
I don't know.
maybe a half hour, 45 minutes.
So she was just in there watching
Yeah.
all of it.
I kept her on the phone so we could communicate. And then when they did finally let her out, she looked like a ghost.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
So how has her death affected your family?
Many ways. I feel like my husband and I are stuck on November 6, 2019. I love all of our children the same. But Chelsea was the one who didn't have a family, so she would come over and keep me company at night, a couple nights a week, The rest of the kids, two of them, the other two live out of state. And, Joni's a full-time mom, a full-time employee, plus a full-time student.
Sure.
So I can't expect her to drop things and come keep me company.
Right.
Right. But it's been tough. It's been real tough. Family members we don't talk to anymore. I don't talk to a lot of friends, not that they've done anything. I just feel I'm not in a happy place, and they are. And I would just do nothing but bring them down.
So you choose not to be around them for that reason. And that's what's hard. I mean, grief is so lonely and individual. And then you add the pandemic to it, which has added so much more isolation and just, events that you used to be able to go to easily are just not as easy to do now.
Exactly.
And yeah, I mean, Jackson died in July of 2019. So I had found a few activities or whatever, busybody things to keep me busy. And that just got ripped away during COVID, so it was okay, now what do I do? Actually that was something I was going to talk to you about, Joni. How has it affected you losing your sibling? That's part of what my focus is with my foundation, is realizing that siblings often get overlooked, not on purpose at all, but it's just parents are so swallowed up by their grief. So I wish you would talk about what that's like for you.
At first, I really struggled, and I kind of just thrown myself in. I keep myself so busy that I kind of don't acknowledge that it happened. So when I'm not busy anymore, I don't know what that's going to look like. But I just really try, I don't know when to stop, because if I stop, I think, and I don't want to do that.
Oh, yeah. So. Oh, yeah. Everything I've done has been a complete and total trauma response. It's oh, no, this hurts too bad. I have to do something else, because, and I'm slightly on the journey of learning that I have to feel it to heal it. And Alvin said that. Mm-hmm. And I have been thinking about that constantly, because you never heal from the death of your child.
No.
But I want to try to get to a place of healing for my other son.
Right.
Because he is still here. Mm-hmm. And it's not easy. It's not easy to separate all that out, but you still need your mom.
Yeah, that's probably been one of the toughest things too, is they're here, but
not here.
Not here. Mm. Yeah.
Oh gosh. I know that. And it's I've been forced to continue to be engaged because I have such a young child. Mm-hmm. And I can see how, if you don't have a young child to parent, how easily you could just lay in bed and not get out.
I did that for a while.
Yeah. But I also feel like that's part of the process, mm-hmm. I had actually just told my husband the other day, I'm there has been 0 days that I have laid in bed and not gotten out of bed, because Ivan won't have it. He just won't have it. And in some ways I'm thankful for that. But in other ways, I'm I feel like I could sit in the middle of the room and just pitch a big old baby fit, because I'm I just want to be sad for a while. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But I can't. So I've had to keep on moving. And even when I don't want to, it's you just kind of have to. But my therapist says, you have a choice, and you make that choice every day. He said they see people who their children have cancer and it's too much for them, so they leave them in the hospital. And it's we can't hardly realize that would happen, but it absolutely does happen. So anytime, you're questioning, how am I doing this? You're making a choice. It's hard and it doesn't feel good, Would you mind talking a little bit about how this has been for your teenage kids. So that would have been their aunt, right?
Yeah. I also think it's important to say that they are, like, my son is actually closer in age to Chelsea than I was.
Wow.
And we lived with my parents for a couple of years. So my kids kind of had a sibling relationship in their own way with her.
Right.
Riley doesn't really, he's my son. He doesn't really talk about it much. He just kind of has gone on to, I mean, I know it affects him, but he just.
How old is he?
He's 18.
Okay.
He just doesn't want to deal with it. My daughter, she's just shut down and shut everyone out. I mean, I think in her head, she thinks if there's no relationship with anyone or she has no connection to people, then if something happens, it's not going to hurt.
Right. I often think about how hard it is for teenagers because they're going through so much with their emotions and hormones and all that. And plus, with all the craziness in the world, you know, it's like there's just a lot more on teenagers now. And I've had a situation where there was a sibling that died and they had surviving teenage siblings, and all of my books were very little child focused. And so I'm like, well, shoot, I got to get books for teenagers. Then I'm like, is a teenager even going to read a book? Like, I don't know. But my thought is, even if they never read it, I want someone to know that someone sees them. And maybe someday they'll pick up that book when nobody's looking or whatever. And you know, just that acknowledgement, because the first time I heard that siblings are called forgotten grievers, it's the reason that I started Love Like Jackson, because I'm like, oh my God, like, and I totally can see it. Like, I can acknowledge it. And like, Ivan would want to look at videos or whatever, and he'd be like, what about me? And I'm like, oh yeah. And I'm like, oh God, you're right here. But it's like, you could just get so wrapped up. Like, it's just, ugh.
Yeah.
And he's obviously too young to understand, but you know, you as a parent, you can understand it more because you have kids. I'm not saying it makes it any easier. It still sucks.
At one point, I even told her, I said, you do have other kids. And I know that hurt, but
I think sometimes, like, I'm thankful for the reminders that Ivan gives me, because without those, I don't know if I could be dug out of that hole. You know what I mean? You know, so we've talked a little bit. So we didn't really go into much, but she did have an accidental overdose.
Yes.
Would you talk a little bit more about that? Because I know we wanted to talk about the fact that there's a lot of stigma attached to that.
Yes. People think with, you know, overdoses or drug addictions, whether it be, you know, prescription drugs or illegal drugs, whatever the case is, that they come from, you know, the homeless or, you know, the junkie laying on the street, or, you know, it's not the case.
Right.
It's not the case at all.
Right.
It wasn't my daughter.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I only found out about her pain pill addiction a couple weeks before she passed. I think I was in denial at that time. My husband was not. He was actually working to get her help. And the night before Chelsea passed, she and I had an argument, and I never got to tell her I was sorry. But when she and I would get into arguments, she would either call my husband or Joni or my daughter-in-law Shannon to tell on me. You know, her siblings were her best friend. Right. They really were. Right. But anyway, so with the addiction, it sucks them in. It really does.
It does. Sometimes it doesn't take long.
No, it doesn't. And, you know, she had so much pain that she would do whatever she had to get rid of it. And that was it. And I think being an EMT, she also thought she knew a little more about medication than she really did.
Well, and that's where the addiction can really play with your mind.
Absolutely.
You know, it can convince you of things that you wouldn't believe otherwise. And that's what's hard, like, when you're not an addict, but you love someone who is, like, you can't really understand how they could think so differently. But their brain works a little differently. It
Absolutely.
really does. And I definitely know that from my own experiences also. We had talked, Melissa, a little bit about when you lose an adult child and you see their friends moving on and doing other things and how that affects you.
Yes. And Chelsea has 2 friends that just recently got engaged, and this is nothing for them because I'm excited as excited can be for them. They have to move on.
Sure.
You know, they have lives to live. They're all in their 20s.
Right.
But to know I'll never see her married, to know that I'll never get to see her be a mom, breaks my heart.
Oh, yeah. Those are the things that I just haven't really even allowed myself to feel because it's years down the road.
Right.
But I'm already seeing Jackson's classmates grow bigger and older and change, you know, and it's like for me, like you said, it's frozen in time.
Yeah. Jackson's
still 7 to me, you know, even though he would have been 10, you just don't see it that way.
I always say forever 24.
Yeah. Yeah. Melissa, you had talked about the grief activities that you did with Annie's Hope that I thought was so wonderful, and I think it really could help somebody. So would you share what you guys did with that?
Yes, we actually, which is where we met Margaret and Alvin.
Yeah.
We started to go for her youngest, in hopes, you know, it would help her. I think she did half of them. And then said that's when she checked out. But we continued, and we would just meet once a week, and everybody in the room we could relate to.
Sure.
They could relate to us. There was a project that we did, and I'll let Joni explain it because it really helped her a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
So we took a plate, and on that plate we wrote just whatever we wanted, a note, anything we wanted. And then when we were done writing on that plate, we put it in a brown bag. We went outside, and you could stay around everyone else and throw it against the wall, or you could walk away and have your own private space and you could beat it with a bat. And that, I think that was the first time after the initial shock of it that I like really was able to just kind of break down and feel my emotions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, it's hard because anger, not necessarily at the person, but at the situation. It's sometimes hard to, you know, have that feeling. And, you know, there's always all mixed up feelings. Like you don't want to be mad at the person, whether it was an accident or not. But that anger is still there and it needs to be processed. I actually had a friend who, after Jackson died, I was one of the first like friends of mine that had lost a child, and nobody knew what to do. And she called me. She goes, I went to Goodwill and I bought a bunch of dishes. I don't know what else to do, but I heard somebody say that breaking dishes is really a good thing. And so we didn't actually end up doing it, but the thought of it, you know, was just so kind because people don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. Right.
And I don't think I've gotten to the point where, like most of the rest of the family, where I broke down. I mean, yeah, I cry, but I'm angry with her.
Yeah.
Angry with the person who gave her the medication.
Sure.
But to actually say that I've literally just lost it, I haven't done that.
Right.
You know, but a week after Chelsea passed, I had to become a caregiver for my little brother who passed away 5 months later. Yeah. So
you really didn't get time.
I didn't get any time.
And you may or may not ever do that. You know what I mean? You may not ever break down. You know, you might just have those little whatever breakdowns as, you know, as it goes along. So were you able to take off work for a while, or how long?
I did. I was off for 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah, doing therapy, doing that during that whole time.
Wow. That's so wonderful. A lot of people don't have that opportunity.
Absolutely.
And good for you for doing therapy too. You know,
yeah, I did therapy over about a year and a half.
Wow.
Yeah.
My husband actually had to go back to work after 2 weeks.
My husband went back after 3 days. Yeah.
How has that affected him?
He was good with going back.
He kind of wanted the distraction.
Yes.
I think that was a little bit of a part of it for my husband too. It was hard for him to just sit there and just be talking about it. In the long term, I think it's very much affected his mental health. But you know, that's sort of like a guy thing too. It's like, let's just bundle it up and,
Right.
you know, not deal with it. You know, has this affected your marriage?
It has not. For the most part. We've had a few little things go on, but no, for the most part. And I remember Joni telling me from the beginning I was mad at him for something. And she said, Mom, a death is either going to make you or break you.
Yes.
And at that point, I was to the point where I was like, I couldn't be hurt any worse than I've been hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I
You
feel
know?
that way. I feel that same way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
nothing's worse.
before Chelsea passed, I would have been like, losing my husband would have been the most devastating thing because I do love him with all my heart.
Right.
But now I'm like,
Right.
I mean, I absolutely love him, but,
Right.
you know,
Right.
yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, because, you know, losing a child certainly doesn't make any of your problems go away.
No.
You know, it's definitely, my husband and I have absolutely had our struggles, and we're still on the struggle bus, if I'm being honest. You know, I feel like we've talked a little bit about, you guys have put some pretty good boundaries in, and would you be willing to talk about that?
As far as,
Well, you know, you had said that you had relationships with people
Yes.
that you no longer have because that's not been healthy for you.
yes.
You don't have to name anybody specific.
The person where the medication came from, I don't have anything else to do with her. When Chelsea first passed, we actually thought it was her Xanax.
Mm.
It wasn't until we got the toxicology report that we found out it was a different medication that was not hers. And it's a pain medicine that's used for heroin addicts, but it's also used for pain, which is, I didn't know that until this family member started taking it. It's called methadone.
Yeah.
And so I don't have a relationship with her anymore. I don't have a relationship with most of my family. My mom, my siblings. I felt once Chelsea passed away, if I have to live on this earth without one of my children, I'm going to live it the way I want to live it and not live it with people making me miserable. So I had to get rid of all the poison.
Yeah. Good for you. I mean, I'm not saying that was easy, but
It wasn't easy.
But you have to do what you have to do to survive, because I think I've just been surviving for these last couple of years.
Absolutely.
And, you know, you hear about stories about people losing their children and what happens to them, but like, you can't fathom it until it happens to you. You brought a couple books. Would you like to talk about them and how they've helped you?
First one is When Bad Things Happen to Good People. I would recommend this book for anyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you've read it?
I have, and it was wonderful.
Yes. Very, very good book by Harold S. Kushner.
Mm-hmm.
So that one's a really good book.
Yes.
The other one, and I think I related to this one really well, It's Okay Not to Be Okay. Because so many times you hear people say, dang, how long is she going to grieve for? I'm going to grieve the rest of my life.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
So this was a really good book by Megan Devine. This one I'm just starting to read. It's called My Sunflower Girl.
Mm-hmm.
So far, it's good.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard nothing but great reviews about it. But
is it a grief book?
It is.
Oh, it is? Okay.
It's about a dad who lost his 10-year, I think, 7 or 10-year-old.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
I think it was to cancer also.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Let me look here.
Yeah. The It's Okay That You're Not Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it does such a good job of giving you permission
Yes.
to feel what you need to feel. And, you know, like, I've been getting a crash course on grief as I'm living it. You know what I
Right.
mean? So it's like everything feels abnormal. And so to read those books and see like a short attention span, you know, there's so many things like not being able to sleep or whatever that are very normal, but you don't know it's normal until you see it written, you know?
Yeah. She was 10 when she passed.
Wow.
Yeah.
It looks like it doesn't look terribly long
No,
either,
it's not.
which is something that definitely appeals to me because, again, my
Yes.
my attention span was so short. I needed like little bits of things.
I was the same way.
Yeah.
Chelsea was real big into journaling. I've never been a journal person, but my best friend actually told me, why don't you try journaling? And I'm like, I've tried. I don't even know where to begin. And she actually just said this to me recently. She said, how about you just write how you're feeling at that moment? If it's sad, write sad. That's all you have to write.
Yeah. Yep. I just did a short little episode about how writing is very therapeutic. It gives you a space to say things that you maybe wouldn't verbalize otherwise. And it gives a name to your feelings. And I definitely have done a lot of writing and it's been a good thing. Joni, is there anything you want to share? You've been a little quiet.
I more or less came because I wasn't sure.
Your moral support?
I wasn't sure how she would do it.
No, I think it's wonderful. Would you talk about your shirt, Chelsea's Circle?
Oh, yes. So my daughter-in-law, Shannon, right after Chelsea passed away, had a friend reach out to her. They own a restaurant, and they wanted to do a fundraiser for her charity, for one of her charities.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided, we wanted to get shirts with Chelsea's name on them.
Mm-hmm.
My oldest granddaughter, Adana, designed them.
Wow, they're cute.
Yeah. And then I think it was one of Shannon's friends that came up with the Chelsea Circle. Because we were like, what can we put on them?
Mm-hmm.
You know? So, yeah. So we all have these shirts. We actually sold some.
Oh, good.
So a lot of her friends have them too.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. I like that. So, you know, we kind of just barely touched on the stigma attached to that. So what do you want people to know about accidental overdose and, you know, just kind of Chelsea's death? What do you want people to know?
Whether it be accidental or, you know, you're a heroin user, or the number one killer right now is fentanyl, which is a prescription medication. I just hope by doing this, people can see how hard it is for the family and get help.
Yeah.
You know, if I could hear that one person got help because of what Joni and I are doing, you're doing,
Right.
I will have done my job.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't stop, of course, but
Right.
I would have done my job.
Right. Well, there's stories that need to be told.
Absolutely.
There's, you know, when you said that you felt like you couldn't get her story out there, it tugged on my heart. And, you know, so hopefully letting people know that there is a place to share these kind of stories, and it doesn't have to be hidden. It doesn't have to be swept under the rug. And, you know, because these things are never going to get better if they don't start getting talked about. You know?
Exactly.
And so shining the light on this kind of stuff, it's hard and it's uncomfortable. But one of the things my therapist says is if you replace the word hard with important, it changes how you approach it. So yes, this is hard, but it's important.
I totally agree with that. I think mental health has a lot to do with drug addiction also. I mean, I know with Chelsea, it was a lot of pain, but she also had mental health issues.
Right.
You know, it runs in our family.
Right.
Both sides for her.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
So I hope people can, and I think this is where our world is, though. We need more help with the whole mental health. There's not enough out there.
And the people that are in it are tired.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. They're exhausted.
They're worn out from all this stuff. And I feel like we're just starting to feel the repercussions from all the isolation. I mean, we've been feeling it, but it's going to be here for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
The way I end each episode is a Maya Angelou quote. And it is, we do the best we can until we know better. And then when we know better, we do better. So what you guys shared could absolutely be something that could help other people. And when we know better, we do better.
Absolutely.
So thank you guys. Thank you so much for sharing Chelsea's story and her beautiful picture.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are beautiful miracles. We are beautiful miracles. We are beautiful miracles. So don't